Good afternoon. Welcome to Inside Indiana Sports Now with Kent Sterling. It's Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. We're brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Dr. Mike O'Neill, flat out the best dentist I've ever gone to, the only dentist I've gone to the last 27 years. I wanted to take control of my dental health, so I called Dr. Mike. You should do the same thing. 317-849-2933 is the number. Hit subscribe, hit like, ring the bell. Let's talk about sports. First, we're going to talk about the NFL draft and what the Colts may do at 21. Then we're going to talk about Indiana Hoosier basketball. Could the 1981 National Championship team compete today? I think that's an interesting question. You look at the assets on that 81 team and the way that they played, the way they dominated the NCAA tournament and the few weeks prior to that, and I think it's a really interesting question, and we'll dig into that toward the end of today's Inside Indiana Sports Now. But let's talk about the NFL draft. Thursday night, the first round. So we're just 2 days away from finding out what the Colts are going to do. Are they going to trade back? Are they going to trade up? Let's answer that question. I think they trade back because they need a left tackle. And once you get beyond that cluster of the three top tackles in this draft, or three top offensive linemen, you've got Penei Sewell, who's going to be long gone by the time the Colts get to the place where they could trade up to. Like if they could trade up to 17, they got no chance at Penei Sewell. You have Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC, who may wind up being a guard, may wind up being a tackle. He's going to be gone. You've got Rashawn Slater from Northwestern. He's going to be gone too. Those guys are going to be out. And then you've got a cluster of several who kind of sit there between, and a lot of people are picking them anywhere from 17 down into the second round. What do you do when mock drafts have Sam Cosmi going to the Colts at number 21, and another mock draft also has Sam Cosmi going to the Colts at 54? That is a chasm of 33 picks. That is an enormous expanse of draft picks for people who supposedly know their way around a mock draft board to project Cosmi. If you're Sam Cosmi and if you're Cosmi's agent, you're like, what are we doing? Do we get excited about Thursday, or is that just going to line us up for disappointment on Thursday as we await Friday's second and third round in this draft? Colts, they need a left tackle. They've got to get a starting left tackle for the 2021 season. I think they can trade back to do it. Chris Ballard is really good at this stuff. That cluster of three will be long gone. You cannot trade up to get there without really spending a lot of draft equity. So Ballard, knowing that there's a cluster of about 5 guys beneath that level, you can get one of those guys, coach him up, and have that person be a starting left tackle if you can get the right guy. Tevin Jenkins may be the right guy. He can play right side. He can probably play left side. He's from Oklahoma State, and the thing that people love about him is that he's violent. A lot of mock drafts have Tevin Jenkins going to the Colts at number 21. Then you've got some wingnut mock drafts. You've got people, these are like smart people who work for CBS Sports. They have the Colts taking a safety at number 54. How in the hell is that going to happen? How are you going to take a safety at 54? You've got your 2 starters in Julian Blackmon and Khari Willis, right? And Malik Hooker's still out there. If Malik Hooker can get healthy, maybe he signs a 1-year deal to come back with the Colts as kind of a widget back there in the defensive backfield and provide a little bit of depth for the Colts. They are not going to take a safety. I cannot believe for the life of me that the Colts would take a safety at 54. You need an edge rush. You need a left tackle. I think they're going to take care of the left tackle. Not at 21. They're going to trade back, and they're going to wind up with the left tackle that they covet. It could be Alex Leatherwood, who is a plug-and-play guard or a guy who could play tackle. Could be Jenkins. Could be Cosmi. Could be any of these guys. Could be Leatherwood. Could be Eichenberg, if they're in love with Liam Eichenberg, the kid from Notre Dame. Notre Dame turns out tackles who are really, really good. Guards too. Let's remember Quentin Nelson is a Notre Dame guy. But they have a need. Christian Darrisaw, right, from Virginia Tech, might have to trade up to get him. I don't think they're going to do that. Tevin Jenkins and Christian Darrisaw, which one would you prefer? I think they're 6 of one, half dozen of another. Anyway, I think it's much more likely they trade back than trade up. They would like to recoup, Chris Ballard would, like to recoup that third-round pick from this draft that they gave up for Carson Wentz. Chris Ballard loves third-round picks, and for good reason. He utilizes them exceptionally well. So trade back, get some bulk in this draft. 6 players is not enough. That's not the number that Chris Ballard likes. This would be the shortest stack of draftees, if they stay at 6, that the Colts have put together since Ballard got here. I think they trade back. With the second round, you could wind up getting, and you're going to get a better pick, right? If you go back to 28 and you take a guy, if Cosme's available, let's just say Cosme's available at 28, and you pick up another pick down the road, then 54 you can utilize to take an edge guy. Or you can use 54 or a trade beyond it, maybe in the third round, to go get a guy like Spencer Brown out of Northern Iowa, who is built just like a starting left tackle, has all the athletic attributes you need to be a starting, maybe a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. However, he doesn't have the experience necessary to be a starting left tackle immediately, or at least they don't think that he does. Maybe he winds up being the guy later in the draft. Maybe a guy like Leatherwood falls to 54. Maybe they trade back from 21 and get Leatherwood at 30. We're going to find out, but I think it's much more likely they trade back than trade up. They are going to wind up with a left tackle, I think, with that first pick, because you have got to protect Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz goes down, right now you've got Jacob Eason as your starting quarterback. And that's not a place where Frank Reich or Chris Ballard or anybody would care to be. They don't know whether Eason can play yet. They'd like to believe that he can be a quality backup, but they don't know that. Do not put Carson Wentz at risk because you want to be frugal during the draft. Sam Tevy is not a starting left tackle. At the edge, you could take Jalen Phillips, right? At 21, you could do that. You could probably trade back and still get him at 26, or if you can't, you could get Jason Away from Penn State. There are a lot of edge rush guys who are going to, Joe Tryon from Washington. You could go get a guy like Azeez Ojulari, who's likely to be drafted at 21 or immediately thereafter. The kid from Georgia, he's a little slight to be a defensive end, but so is Robert Mathis. So there are a lot of decisions to be made, and there are a lot of other guys. Gregory Rousseau is a guy that maybe you could get in the second round. A lot of guys at the edge who are terrific. Now, if you want to go for like a long shot in the first round, because I think he's going to be gone by the time the Colts draft, and I do not want to see the Colts take this guy, but he's terrific. J.C. Horn is really, really good. Horn is going to be a wonderful cornerback in the National Football League, but at some point you got to stop chasing him, right? You took Quincy Wilson in 2017. He didn't pan out, so you had to take Rock Ya-Sin. He is kind of on the brink of not panning out, and so now you're going to take one with a first-round pick rather than take a left tackle, which is a huge need, a position of huge need? I don't think so. I don't think you take a cornerback in the first round or the second round. Now, if you can get some picks moving forward in the third round, fourth round, third round, I think you take a wide receiver. Anyway, this is driving me nuts. We got 2 more days of this before we find out what the hell is going to go on. We've got some people who are saying that the Colts are going to trade back twice in the first round, and that wouldn't surprise me. Chris Ballard loves them picks. I think he's going to go get bunches of those picks, as many as he can, to bolster this roster kind of from the bottom up, which is what he is really, really good at. You know, and he did a nice job also of utilizing second-round picks, some of them, and first-round picks to the extent that he's had them. Quentin is terrific. Number 6 overall pick. You know, Ya-Sin, not great so far. You would have liked to have gotten more productivity out of Malik Hooker, but that's just the way kind of the cookie crumbles with Malik. You tear an Achilles, and early in his career, he tore that ACL. What are you going to do? So we'll see what happens. The Colts, not on the clock yet, but it's getting close. I just hope it's kind of a quick night. And I hope ESPN doesn't drag their ass through this thing and kind of stack up picks because they can't keep their analysis truncated to the point where we're paying attention to it anymore. It's way too long. Susie Colbert needs to stop talking to draft picks immediately after every pick. We hear enough from these guys. All right, and they all say exactly the same thing, so stop it, Susie. All right, could the 1981 National Championship team from Indiana compete in today's college basketball game? The game's changed. You've got a three-point shot now. You've got a shot clock. Those didn't exist in 1981. I think that this team is uniquely built to play in this day and age. I think if you transported that 80-81 team from then to now, move them 40 years in the future, and they all stay healthy, I think that is a terrific basketball team this year. Isaiah Thomas. How many better point guards have there been in college basketball than Isaiah Thomas? You could probably count them on one hand. Then at the 2, you got Randy Whitman, who is a hell of a shooter, really good shooter, good stretch defense type of wing guy, and a very heady defensive player who played in the NBA through 1992. Ted Kitchell didn't play in the NBA at all. But you talk about a stretch 3, this guy, long before anybody even thought what a stretch 3 is, he was a stretch 3, a knockdown 20-foot shooter, a guy who would have made a bunch of threes in 1981 if that was the rule. They experimented with it moving forward in like 1983. Ted Kitchell was a dynamic scorer and shooter. In that year, in 1981, he scored 40 points against Illinois, for goodness sake. Then you've got 2 guys down low, Ray Tolbert and Landon Turner, who were dynamic. They were athletic as hell. They were good shot blockers, terrific rebounders, and wonderful defenders. So there's your starting 5. Now, you're not going to go 10 deep with that rotation, right? You're just not. You're not going to bring Phil Eisenbarger and Glenn Grunwald off the bench, or Chuck Franz, Mike Lefebvre. Those guys are not going to log heavy minutes, although Franz was a very capable scorer, dropped 53 on New Albany's head in the sectional final back in 1979. A really good scorer, a really good shooter, might have been a little ahead of his time. If he had been 10 years younger, probably would have been a guy who could have run the point and shot out to about 25 feet. He was terrific at Clarksville High School. Anyway, Landon Turner probably would have been the number 1 overall draft pick in 1982 had he not been paralyzed in that car wreck on his way to Kings Island. Ray Tolbert played in the NBA until 1985. Terrific player. And then a little bit beyond that as well. Jim Thomas coming off the bench, a very athletic 2 guard, and Steve Risley, who was, I thought, really kind of the glue guy for that second unit, which really didn't exist. I mean, they went 7-8 deep maybe on that team. Steve Risley was really, really good at what they did. And the thing that made that team dynamic is they were like this. They had great chemistry together once Bob Knight kind of got out of the way and turned the keys to that team over to Isaiah Thomas. They got good really, really quick. I think they had the kind of quality across the starting lineup and positionally to be really, really good in today's day and age. I don't know whether they would have been capable of winning a national championship, but this was a really, really good team that I think could have become a wonderful hybrid in the 90s. If they had been 10 years later, I still think they win a national championship. I don't know what they would be today, but back then, that was a badass team that played at a championship level for an extended period of time and beat the living hell out of a Maryland team that had 2 terrific pros on it and a team that was really well coached. The 81 team, I think they would move into college basketball's elite today. I don't know whether they would win a championship, but I think they're a top 10 team in 2021. Tomorrow morning, Breakfast with Kent, I cannot wait to talk to you about this draft and continue to dig deep. Who is Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama? What makes him tick? We'll talk about that. Sam Cosme, all the rest of the guys, 6 o'clock straight up on Facebook Live, and then immediately thereafter on YouTube. Hit subscribe, like, ring the bell, do all that stuff. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning.